The hallway outside the conference room was quiet enough to hear the clock tick. Frosted glass, a brass handle, my reflection looking back in a suit they never expected to see on me. I could feel the old ache in my chest trying to wake up, the one that used to light up at every family slight. I let it pass. I opened the door. Before we jump in, I'd love to know, where are you watching this from? Have you ever been underestimated, judged by your clothes, your accent, your background? Tell me in the comments. Let your story echo too. And hey, make sure you subscribe and follow this channel. It helps us keep bringing you these juicy stories. They were all there. Aunt Ruth with her pearls turned tight against her throat. Uncle Victor pretending to read the agenda but watching me over the top of his glasses. My brother, Caleb, tapping a pen like a metronome for nerves he would never admit. Naomi, the cousin who once called me dramatic, staring at her folded hands. At the end of the table sat Mr. Holloway, the family lawyer, with a neat stack of folders and a face that said the numbers were not our friends. The air had that dry paper smell of trouble. No one stood to greet me. They just went still, the way people do when a fire alarm stops and the silence feels louder. "Thank you for coming," Mr. Holloway said, voice even. The others didn't echo him. They looked like people waiting for a verdict. I took the chair opposite the window so the skyline sat behind them. It made their faces easy to read. It made me remember that I had learned to breathe without any of them. "We wouldn't have called if it wasn't urgent," Aunt Ruth said. Her tone tried for gentle and landed on brittle. "There have been developments." Caleb slid a folder toward me, careful not to let our fingers touch. Inside, red lines, missed payments, a loan with terms I would never have signed. A letter from the bank. A notice from the court. And a line that explained the begging texts and late-night calls I ignored until I didn't. No release without the consent of the co-trustee. My name. I closed the folder. No rush. No fear. I watched them watch me. For years I had practiced being small around them. That skill was gone. "We know things were said," Naomi offered, voice thin. "Back then. People change." I let the sentence hang. The room hummed with the vents and with things no one wanted to say out loud. Mr. Holloway cleared his throat. "Legally, nothing moves without your signature. Practically, nothing survives without your plan. Power has a sound. It is the sound of a room waiting for your next word." I folded my hands, steady, and felt the years between who I was and who I had become settle into place like a key in a lock. I looked at each of them one by one and let the quiet do the work. Then I lifted my eyes to the window, to the city that had taught me how to stand, and brought my gaze back to the table. And in that moment I could save them, or let them sink. I wasn't born rebellious. I was just born different, and in my family that was worse. Where the others smiled and swallowed things whole, I asked questions. Where they nodded along to bad behavior, I frowned. Where they wore silence like a badge of loyalty, I carried honesty like a loose thread, always getting caught on something. Growing up in the Talbot family meant knowing your place. And mine, apparently, was to sit quietly, thank people for crumbs, and pretend I didn't notice the rot under the marble countertops. Everyone played a role in the family play. Caleb, my older brother, was the golden boy. Naomi was the delicate one. Uncle Victor was the business genius. Aunt Ruth held it all together with thin smiles and thick silence. Me. I was the difficult one. I heard it whispered after dinners. "She always takes things too personally. She's got such a temper. You know how she gets." At 12, I pointed out that Caleb had copied a report off the internet. He had printed it off in full, even left the formatting marks in. Thought I was helping. Instead, I got a lecture from my mother about family unity. Caleb got a pat on the back for finding a way to finish under pressure. At 14, I asked why Grandpa's will had changed just weeks before he died, and why Naomi, who had only visited once that year, now owned his cottage. I didn't accuse anyone. I just asked. Aunt Ruth spilled her wine. My father told me to watch my mouth. Naomi cried and said I was jealous. That night they told me I was becoming too combative. By 16, I learned to read silences like sentences. I saw the way my relatives looked at me when I entered the room, like I was always one comment away from ruining everything. But I couldn't help it. I saw things. I felt things. I didn't want to let them slide. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. It was subtle. No one ever said I didn't belong. They just stopped including me. I stopped being asked to help with party planning. My name was left off group emails. Decisions about grandma's care, about family finances, about vacations, all made without me. I'd find out later, always too late to contribute. So I kept trying. Birthdays, graduations, baby showers. I showed up. I smiled. I brought thoughtful gifts. But nothing stuck. I was tolerated, not wanted. And when I left the room, I could feel the conversation exhale. But the final break came the year I turned 22. I had just finished my internship at a nonprofit and was working full-time at a small marketing agency downtown. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, and it felt like a step toward something real. I had been invited to Sunday dinner and I went hoping maybe things were softening. Maybe time had sanded down old resentments. I should have known better. That night, between spoonfuls of Aunt Ruth's potato salad and Uncle Victor's bragging about new contracts, Caleb pulled me aside. His voice was low, casual, too friendly to be real. "Hey, can you do me a favor?" he said, holding out a folder. "Just need you to sign as a witness for this document. It's nothing. Just paperwork for the investors." I took the folder. It wasn't nothing. It was a falsified expense report. Fabricated vendor invoices. Fake numbers boosting quarterly earnings. It wasn't just shady, it was fraud. And he wanted me to sign off as a witness to something I knew was false. I looked up at him. "This is illegal." He shrugged. "It's already filed. Just need a back date and a witness signature to cover us. Don't make it a big deal." My stomach sank. "You want me to lie? On paper?" "It's not lying. It's cleaning up a formality." I shook my head. "No, Caleb. I'm not signing this." His smile dropped. "Don't be dramatic." There was the family's favorite word for me. I walked out of the kitchen and into the dining room, folder in hand, voice steady and clear. I placed it in front of Uncle Victor. "Is this what we're doing now? Asking each other to falsify records?" The room fell into stunned silence. Aunt Ruth looked at Caleb, then at me. "Sweetheart, I'm sure you misunderstood." "No, I didn't." I looked at my father. "Did you know about this?" He didn't meet my eyes. Sometimes things get complicated in business. That was all I needed to hear. "I'm not signing anything. And if you try to file this with my name on it, I will report it." The silence turned colder. Naomi let out a scoff. "God, you always have to ruin everything." Aunt Ruth's voice came sharp. "You come into this home and accuse your family of criminal behavior? Who do you think you are?" I looked at them, really looked, and I realized something. I could stand here and keep trying to fit in with people who would lie, cheat, and silence me. Or I could leave. I walked out, left the folder on the table, walked past the stares and the shocked silence and the disapproval painted into every wrinkle and frown. No one followed me. No one called that night, or the next day, or the week after. The text I got from my father 2 weeks later was short. "Maybe it's best you take some space. You're clearly not aligned with the family right now." And that was that. 4 years I was the one who had to sit through holidays alone. I watched their lives move on through social media. Weddings I wasn't invited to, babies I hadn't met, photos where my absence wasn't even noticed. They never asked how I was. They never reached out. But in that silence, something unexpected bloomed. Freedom. I didn't have to contort myself anymore. I could say what I thought, feel what I felt, build something of my own. It was hard. There were nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if I'd done the right thing. There were birthdays I spent alone. But every time I looked back at that moment with the folder in my hands, I felt proud. They wanted me to play small so they could play dirty. I chose to walk away, not because I didn't care but because I finally did. And I never looked back. When I walked out of that dining room, I didn't just leave my family. I left every illusion I had about safety. You ever have that moment? That split second where the people you thought would protect you show you they never really saw you? That kind of silence can echo louder than screaming. And when the door closed behind me that night, all I had was my name and my conviction. But let me ask you something. Have you ever had to start over with no one clapping for you, no one checking in, no one hoping you'd make it? If you have, you already know. Survival becomes your language. And then little by little you start rewriting the story. I had about $286 in my account, 1 box of clothes, and a laptop that liked to overheat if I opened more than 2 tabs. I rented a room in the back of a woman's house who kept cats and secrets. The bed squeaked when I breathed too hard and the window didn't fully shut. Winter was unforgiving, but so was I. I took the first job I could get. an overnight cashier at a gas station that smelled like burnt coffee and tire rubber. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and food, but it was something. I stood behind that counter every night, scanning candy bars and beer cans, memorizing self-help audiobooks when the store was empty. I used to dream of yelling at my family, telling them how wrong they were. But I stopped wasting my dreams on people who had already written me out of theirs. During the day, I enrolled in community college. I took classes part-time, paying for 1 credit at a time. I studied marketing because I wanted to understand what made people buy into lies, and how to sell truth instead. I wrote essays on a second-hand laptop, ran on black coffee and vending machine crackers. Some nights I couldn't keep my eyes open. Some mornings I cried in the shower so no one would hear me. Have you ever had to rebuild while pretending you were fine? If you have, I see you. I was there too. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Once you accept it, you can use it to push off. I started a side hustle making social media posts for small businesses. I'd sit in the back room of the gas station on my breaks, designing flyers in Canva and answering emails like I wasn't standing between the windshield washer and the beef jerky aisle. One of my first clients was a local hair salon. They loved my work and told a friend, then another friend. Before long, I had 3 steady clients and enough money to quit the night shift. It felt like the world had opened a tiny crack and said, "Okay, let's see what you can do with this." I took it. I started freelancing full-time while finishing my degree. I learned how to pitch myself, how to negotiate rates, how to lose clients and find better ones. I built a portfolio. I networked at events where I didn't know a single soul but shook hands like I belonged there. I showed up with my head high even when my shoes had holes and my voice shook when I spoke. People often say, "Don't let bitterness take root." And I didn't. But I did let ambition grow like wild ivy. And somewhere deep in that ambition was a truth I held close. They thought they buried me. They didn't know I was a seed. Now I want to pause for a second. What would you do if the people who doubted you had to watch you bloom? Not for revenge, but as proof that they never held your roots in the first place. I graduated with honors. Nobody in my family came. No calls, no texts, not even a congrats message. I remember standing outside the ceremony, cap in hand, watching the other grads take pictures with their parents. And for a second I felt that old ache again. That hunger to belong. But then I remembered I belonged to me now. After graduation, I pitched a campaign to a mid-size e-commerce company. It went viral. They offered me a contract. I hired a virtual assistant, then a junior designer. Within a year, I was running a boutique agency from a tiny studio with second-hand furniture and more drive than square footage. I had clients from 4 different states. I was building something real. One night, after closing a deal with a brand I used to admire from afar, I sat alone in my kitchen, legs folded on the counter, champagne in hand. Thought about Caleb, Aunt Ruth, Naomi. All the times I was told I was too emotional, too intense, too much. I toasted to all of it. Every cut they thought would break me only bled out the weak parts of me. What was left? Fire. Steel. Focus. Tell me, if you've ever been told you're too much, too loud, too sensitive, how did you use that fire? Are you still holding the match? I didn't become rich overnight. I wasn't featured in Forbes. There was no viral moment that changed everything. It was slow. Relentless. Built one email, one pitch, one yes at a time. I got smarter. I made mistakes. I lost money. I gained clarity. I hired. I fired. I scaled. By my late 20s, I bought my first property, a fixer-upper duplex. I rented the downstairs and lived upstairs. Painted every wall myself. Scrubbed every tile. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about becoming. I started mentoring young women who were overlooked, underestimated, called too much, like I had been. I told them what I wish someone had told me at 22. You don't need their approval to be whole. You just need your truth and the courage to carry it forward. Years passed. Success became quiet, stable. I built reserves, not just in my bank account but in my spirit. I didn't think about my family much anymore. Not out of bitterness, just peace. I had accepted they were part of my story, but not my future. Until that message came. One crisp autumn afternoon, an email landed in my inbox. From Mr. Holloway, the family lawyer. I almost deleted it without opening. But something made me stop. It was formal. Polite. Urgent. There had been issues. Complications. A matter involving the family trust. They needed my participation. My signature. I laughed when I read it. Not out of spite but irony. The same people who had cut me out now needed me to save what they couldn't protect. And just like that, the story looped back to the beginning. So now I ask you again. If the people who cast you out were the same ones who now needed your grace, what would you do? Would you rise to help? Or let them sink under the weight of their own choices? Me. I had one more chapter to write. Funny how the ones who silenced you the loudest are the first to call when their world begins to burn. The email landed in my inbox like a ghost tapping at the window. Subject: urgent. Trust dispute/immediate action required. From m.holloway@talbotfirm.com. Date: 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, 6:17 a.m. I read it 3 times before I even moved. It had no greeting. Just a folded, formal tone, neither cold nor warm. Just uncomfortable. Dear Miss Talbot, I write to inform you of significant developments regarding the Talbot Family Trust. Due to recent events, all further decisions require co-trustee sign-off. Your presence is requested at a family resolution meeting this Thursday at 11 a.m. at Holloway and Burke LLP. Kindly confirm your attendance. That was it. No, how are you? No, it's been a while. Just legal need, carefully worded. At first I almost deleted it. The old wounds flinched like muscle memory. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. But curiosity, it always gets the better of us, doesn't it? I searched for the address, checked the firm's listing. Real place. Real lawyers. This wasn't some bait email. This was real. They needed me. You ever had someone slam a door in your face only to come knocking on your door barefoot in the rain? Because that's what it felt like. For 2 nights I didn't respond. Not because I didn't know what I wanted to say. Believe me, I had drafts. One said no. One said oh. One just had a gif of Oprah saying you tried it. But I needed to think. I walked my neighborhood at night, watching porch lights flicker on like little declarations of we're okay in here. I passed by the bakery that used to donate leftovers to the shelter, and the bookstore that stocked local authors like they were royalty. And I thought about what it had taken to build my peace. I wasn't angry anymore. Not bitter. His cause. My family wasn't a wound anymore, but they were a scar. And scars tug when the weather changes. Still, part of me wondered what crisis could force that many stubborn people into the same room with my name on their breath. So I wrote back. I'll be there. Talbot. Thursday morning came dressed in overcast skies. I wore slate gray with black heels. Simple, sharp, forgettable to anyone but them. For them it would speak volumes. Have you ever walked into a place that used to feel too big for you, and suddenly realized the walls were small? That was me, stepping into Holloway and Burke's polished lobby. Gold-lettered directories, marble floors, and the faint scent of old money and cold coffee. Talbot? The receptionist asked. I nodded. They're waiting for you in conference room B. Of course they were. The hallway was silent. My heels tapped out a rhythm that felt like a countdown. 1 breath. 2. I placed my hand on the doorknob and let myself in. And there they were. Caleb. Naomi. Aunt Ruth. Uncle Victor. Even cousins I hadn't seen since I was disinvited from Naomi's wedding. They sat in rows, some standing, some avoiding eye contact. The same people who used to roll their eyes at everything I said now flinched when I walked in. I set my bag down. Took the seat they had left at the head of the table. They didn't greet me. Didn't know how. I waited. Let the silence stretch just long enough to remind them that the rules had changed. Mr. Holloway, still bespectacled and stiff, finally broke the silence. Miss Talbot. Thank you for coming. I tilted my head. Of course. Sounded urgent. Aunt Ruth cleared her throat. It's complicated. Oh, now it's complicated? She shifted uncomfortably. Her pearl earrings trembled just enough to make me smile. Naomi looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her designer bag sat on the floor like it was exhausted too. Caleb leaned forward, knuckles white. There's a problem with the trust. Dad's will had a clause, one that no one paid attention to until now. I raised an eyebrow. And what does that have to do with me? Mr. Holloway cleared his throat. Your grandfather added a co-trustee clause 5 years before he passed. If the primary trustee, your father, were to become incapacitated, all decisions would require joint approval from both named co-trustees. And? I asked, though I already knew. You're the co-trustee, he said flatly. Appointed in secret. only revealed upon activation. But I let the irony bloom quietly in the room. The girl who was never trusted now held the family's trust in her hands. That's poetic, isn't it? I could see the shame in their eyes. And beneath it, desperation. Uncle Victor spoke next. There have been financial complications. Some legal issues. Properties frozen. Assets in review. If we don't act soon, it could all unravel. Act how? Asked coolly. They launched into a swirl of business jargon, numbers, percentages, litigation threats. But all I heard was the sound of walls closing in around people who once stood too tall to look down. They needed signatures to unlock access to accounts. They needed strategy to manage PR after a scandal involving shady loans. They needed calm leadership. They needed a grown-up. And that grown-up was me. The irony was almost too sharp to swallow. I want to pause here. Can I ask you something? If the very people who once erased you suddenly needed you to save them, what would you do? Would you help? Would you watch? Would you wait? Because that's what I did. I waited. I watched. And then I spoke. I'll need time to review everything. And full transparency. Every document. Every signature. Every dollar. They nodded. I turned to Naomi. I'll also need a personal apology. For the wedding. For the texts. For calling me unstable when I asked questions you didn't want to answer. She looked like she might cry. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I let that hang. Then I turned to Caleb. I want full control over the communication strategy. My name doesn't go on anything I haven't personally approved. Agreed. He clenched his jaw. Agreed. And one more thing, I said, rising slowly, smoothing my skirt. From now on, you address me as Ms. Talbot in any professional setting. I earned that name back. You don't get to say it like it's a joke anymore. No one argued. They couldn't. That night, I walked out of the building with the trust packet in my hand and my heels echoing in the marble hallways. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just breathed. Not in triumph. Not in spite. But in clarity. This was the girl you cut out. This is the woman you now answer to. And I wasn't done yet. I'm not here for payback. I'm here for power with purpose. The conference room, once so sterile and stiff, now hummed with tension like a violin string pulled too tight. I sat at the end of the long mahogany table, hands folded neatly in front of me. The trust documents were stacked beside my phone, and the air conditioner above hummed as if to fill the silence no one dared to break first. Across from me, the same people who once whispered about me at holiday dinners now scrambled to make noise loud enough to erase what they'd done. Aunt Ruth leaned forward, her hands folded as if in prayer. We know we were harsh, dear. But family is complicated. You know that. Uncle Victor cleared his throat, his voice suddenly gentle, measured. We didn't realize how strong you were. You've built something impressive. You've done well. Naomi, eyes glossy, said softly, we were wrong. I was wrong. I said things I regret. You didn't deserve it. Caleb didn't say much. Just looked at me and nodded like a man who had lost too much pride to speak. Everyone was talking now. Pleading. Bargaining. Layering polite apologies with veiled desperation. Even the lawyer had stepped back, arms crossed, letting it all unfold. They weren't hiding it anymore. They needed me. I listened. I let it all wash over me like a tide I no longer feared. I didn't interrupt. Didn't argue. I just sat there, calm, centered, and silent. Because silence, when you've earned it, is more powerful than shouting. I remembered being 16, crying in my room after Aunt Ruth called me dramatic for standing up for Naomi when no one else did. I remembered Caleb rolling his eyes when I said I didn't want to lie for him about the money that just went missing. I remembered sitting alone at family events, invisible and inconvenient. No, they had made me invisible. But I made myself inevitable. I stood up slowly, pushed the documents toward the center of the table, and let my voice cut through the air. Not loud, not angry, but crystal clear. I hear all of you, I said. And I accept your effort. But let me be clear about something. Every eye turned toward me. I'm not here for payback. I'm here for power with purpose. You could have heard a pin drop. I'm willing to help, I continued, voice steady. But on my terms. This family ran on secrecy and control for too long. That ends today. I opened the folder and pulled out a sheet I had prepared the night before. I slid it across the table. "These are my conditions," I said. "If you want my support, if you want this trust to move, if you want the assets unfrozen, you'll agree to every item listed." Uncle Victor squinted at the page. "What is this?" "Governance," I said simply. "And accountability." I let them read. Condition 1. I am granted full executive oversight of the trust's financial recovery plan. Nothing moves without my approval. Condition 2. A third-party firm will audit every decision made in the last 10 years. No exceptions. Condition 3. A charitable fund is to be created in my name. Yes, my name. Focused on supporting young women from fractured families with seed money drawn from the family account. Condition 4. All public statements regarding the family's affairs must go through me. I control the message. I protect our future. Condition 5. There will be no more secrets. You want my help. You give me truth in return. Naomi let out a breath like a balloon deflating. This is a lot. I met her eyes. So was being cast out for telling the truth. Caleb finally spoke. "You're not even angry, are you?" I tilted my head. "You want me to be. It'd make this easier for you. But no. Anger is a weight I put down years ago. What I'm carrying now is clarity. And it's lighter." I walked to the window and looked out over the city. The same city that once swallowed me whole and taught me how to climb its walls with bleeding hands. "When I left," I said without turning around, "I swore I'd never beg for belonging again. And I never did. I built my own name, my own voice, my own peace." I turned back to them. "So no, I'm not here to get even. I'm here to lead. And I don't need applause or apologies to do it. But if you want me, if you truly want my help, you'll sign that document today." The room was still again. But this time it wasn't awkward. It was respect. Hard-earned. And real. Mr. Holloway looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "It's a strong proposal," he said, addressing the others. Uncle Victor signed first. Slowly, deliberately, with the slight shake of a man who once held all the power and now had to give it away. Naomi signed next. Her signature trembled. Aunt Ruth hesitated, but only for a moment. Then she signed. Caleb, last of all, looked at me before picking up the pen. "Do you think you'll ever forgive us?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But that's not what today is about." As they signed one by one, I sat back down in the chair I had once been denied. But now it was mine. Not borrowed. Not begged for. Earned. And if you're watching this now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a room where your voice was once silenced, only to return with power and purpose? What would you do if the people who once cast you out now needed your leadership to survive? Tell me in the comments. Let your story echo to. And remember, being underestimated is not a weakness. It's a setup. For a return they never saw coming. They didn't say thank you. Not really. Oh, there were awkward nods, some muttered acknowledgments, a stiff handshake here and there. But no one said, "Thank you for saving us." That's fine. I didn't walk into that room expecting applause. I walked in with something better. Clarity. I helped them. On my terms. I cleaned up the mess they created, but not because I owed them anything. I did it because I refused to let the same dysfunction that tried to break me define me. I showed up for myself. I protected my name. And I led with purpose. And when it was done, the signatures inked, the plan in place, the final documents filed, I walked out. Quietly. Dignified. and no one chased me this time. No one shouted after me or tried to make me stay for dinner like old times. Because they knew I wasn't coming back to that place. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not ever again. You know, people often ask what it's like being the family outcast. Let me tell you, it's lonely. It's cold. It's quiet in a way that echoes. At first, it breaks you in ways no one can see. You start to question yourself. Am I too much? Too different? Too honest? You shrink, hoping that maybe if you just say less, take up less space, agree more, they'll love you again. But then something changes. Silence becomes peace. Distance becomes freedom. And loneliness becomes fuel. That was my journey. I spent years believing I was the problem. That my voice was too loud, my heart too sensitive, my dreams too unreasonable. But the truth is, I just didn't fit into a mold that was never made for me. They didn't know how to hold space for someone who challenged them, who didn't play the role of obedient daughter, silent niece, compliant cousin. They needed me to be smaller. And when I refused, They left me behind. But I need you to hear this. Being left behind is not the end. Sometimes it's the beginning. Because here's the truth I learned on the other side of rejection. They thought they buried me. They didn't know I was a seed. Every shift I worked. Every night I cried. Every book I read. Every boundary I set. Every time I chose grace over spite. Every single moment I stood up when no one clapped. It grew me. And I don't resent the pain anymore. Because pain made me powerful. Pain taught me how to love myself when no one else did. Pain introduced me to the strongest version of me. The woman who could walk into a room full of people who once called her too emotional, and now call her Ms. Talbot. To anyone out there listening, maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you've been the black sheep. The scapegoat. The one no one stood up for. Maybe you were mocked for dreaming too big, or for refusing to go along with something you knew was wrong. Maybe they laughed at your broken shoes. Ignored your tears. Rolled their eyes at your truth. But you're still here. You're watching this now because deep down, you know, the outcast is often the one with the clearest vision. The one who survives. The one who leads. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been the outsider? Not the misunderstood hero. Not the rebellious teen. But the actual outsider. The one who got uninvited, blocked, mocked, and forgotten. So, what did it teach you? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. Let your voice echo here. Let your truth meet others who've been through it too. You are not alone. And your story doesn't end with rejection, unless you let it. I'll leave you with this. Sometimes the seat they refuse to give you is the one you're meant to build yourself. And when you do, don't use it to look down. Use it to lift others who've been told they're too loud, too strange, too difficult, too emotional. Because one day they'll realize, you weren't too much. You were just too real for their comfort. And that, my friend, is power. See you in the next story. Until then, stay strong, stay wise, and let your justice echo. Subscribe for more stories that speak truth, expose betrayal, and celebrate resilience.